Is that Molly? All right, got you, Molly. Well, I guess the first thing to do is to say that we were talking about the due date for the paper. I said, isn't it nice to have 2 days of a study break, no classes, to get all your work done? And someone said, yeah, but the paper for this class is due on Monday. Is that right? And all these people involved in the play, and I said, well, why didn't I make it due on Saturday so you would have more time to get it done? And I don't know why I didn't make it due on Saturday. And then I explained to the rest of the class, well, who am I looking for here? Ah, Malia. I didn't recognize you all dressed up in your... Isn't that Malia? Oh, there's Malia right there. No, that's right. There's Malia. Did I mark you here, Malia? No, I didn't, but I will now. So who came in behind you? Oh, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Rebecca. All right. Good. Now I'm getting everything straight. I'll get you all figured out and the semester will end. This cycle will end. So anyway, I said before class started, the reason I have the paper due on Monday is because if somebody really messes their paper up, I want to be able to give them a chance to fix it before the end of the cycle. But from reading your pilgrimage papers, I think all of you are very good writers, so I don't think there'll be a problem with that. So we just changed, I put a note here, when I get home I'm going to go on Canvas and change the due date to Saturday the 20th. Does that help? Take some pressure off? And I was telling some people before class started how I used to always write papers. You know, do they tell you in English class, when you're going to write a paper, think of your topic, make an outline, and then fill it in? I never did that. I always, since it's a research paper, I go to the library and do all of my research first. I have a topic in mind, so I do all this research to find out what people say about that topic. Since I don't know anything about it, I'm just out collecting information. Then when I think I have enough stuff, how long is this paper supposed to be?
10 pages.
10 pages. So when I think I have enough stuff to fill up 10 pages, then I put it on a table and spread it out and start putting the stuff together in categories. And then I take my categories and put them around in some order. And there's the outline for my paper. And then I just start typing and taking stuff from all these people. And of course, you know what happens. I mean, it's plagiarism if you just take it and don't give them credit. So I just say so-and-so says and put the little reference in it, so-and-so says. And I just type my paper by quoting all these people I found or paraphrasing what they said and then giving them credit for it at the end of the paragraph. And that makes writing a paper very easy. And then you're learning stuff about the topic you have an interest in. You're just not trying to decide in advance what ought to be the points in the topic. You just kind of let what you find out there, let the literature, so to speak, kind of let your review of the literature guide your outline for your paper. And if you're finished writing and you don't have 10 pages, then you just add, well, my paper will be about this topic and this topic, add another topic, and then go do some more research and make your paper a little longer. If your topic you really have an interest in doesn't have a lot of stuff out there for it, then just add another topic. Say, I'm writing, and then in your introduction say, I decided to write my paper on 2 topics. You don't have to say, because I need that much to get to 10 pages. I just said, because I have an interest in these 2 topics, and this is what I found. Does that help? It should not be. It should not be a page 498 where we talk about anxiety disorders. We should not let writing papers create anxiety for us. We should just say, you know, I'm going to figure out a way to do this in a way that's beneficial to me. I learned something. It satisfies the professor's requirements that I show them I know how to do research. And then to make sure I'm not plagiarizing, I give credit. And if everything I put in my paper has a reference or a footnote, that's okay. If it's a research paper, I don't have to put my opinion in there. Okay, so any questions? So for the people online, I'm going to change the due date to the 20th for the paper, especially for the sake of those in the play, but also to let you take advantage of those 2 days of, what do they call it, study break, so you have a break to get some studying done. Okay, the other thing I need to take care of today, because we have class today, class on Monday, and then class on Wednesday, and that's it. But we're in chapter 13, and we only have chapters 14 and 15 to cover, so we're in good shape for the material. But somebody asked me the other day, they said, are you ever going to, all those questions you ask us, are you going to do anything with that? And today is the day. So watch what's going to happen. I'm going to click down here on the little Google thing. And the first question I have, here's what the question was written. How can I balance work, school, and social life? And so I went to Google and I typed in, how can I balance, well, watch, I'll just go back and do this to show you what happens. This is kind of cool, okay? How can I balance, what was it I'm going to balance? Work. And look what happens. See, I just type in, how can I balance, and I put work, and then it gives me all those choices. How can I balance work and school? How can I balance work and study, work and life? How can I balance whatever? So I just clicked on, how can I balance work and school? So I come down here and click on, how can I balance work and school? And look what pops up. 7 tips to help you balance work and school. 12 tips to balance work. Remember that thing I talked about? Remember when we talked about, you know, keys to happiness? 3 keys, 5 keys, 10 keys, 7 keys. It's just the way we think in our culture. How to balance work and school, balancing work and school, balancing work and school, and balancing high school and part-time work. 7 tips to balance your school. 3 steps to balance work and school like a boss. I mean, do you understand? And now, of course, did some of you look at this up here when it said about 423 million results? Okay, does everyone know that when you Google something, the ones that pop up first are the ones that have been looked at the most often? Mm-hmm. So I don't need to go look at 423 million of these things. I just scroll down through here and look at some of these and click on them until I find something that's useful. There, does that take care of that one? Well, then let's go back to the top. And let's type in another one. Delete this one and go to the next one I have. Okay, here was the question that was written on the paper. What's the solution to managing time in an overuse of phone society? So, here's what I did. Because the computer likes how-to stuff. How to manage time and telephone. You follow me? And I click on how to manage. Now see, nothing popped up down there. Well, a couple of things did, but I'll just click on this. Time management tips for incoming phone calls. How to save time on outgoing calls. Managing phone calls. 20 ways to save time with your smartphone. 3 ways to manage your time. How to handle phone interruptions. You follow me? There's all kinds of good stuff out there. So let's go to the next one. Now, you thought I was going to take time in class to answer all of your questions? No, I'm just showing you how to find answers. If we took time to do that, we wouldn't get to go through all of them. Time management issues. Okay? Now, that's exactly what's on the paper, so I'll just type it in. Time management issues. And what pops up? Look at all the choices you have. Which one do you want to click on?
The first one.
Or do you want to talk about the ones for college? Or for college students? I mean, do you understand? You got for teachers, for nursing. Isn't that interesting? Why do you think it would pop up nursing and teachers? Who are 2 busy people in life? Anyone know a teacher?
Yeah.
And anyone know a nurse? Those are just busy occupations. So let's just click on the first one. 10 common time management mistakes that are slowing you down. Well, there you go. In other words, it's like you'll be a better manager of your time if you figure out what's stealing your time or taking your time away from you or wasting it. Top 5 problems in time management. Did you guys know all this stuff was out there on your internet for you? You just didn't know how to go find it, huh? All right, let's delete this one because I've got a mess of them here. I have a ton of them. I don't know how I'm going to get through all of these. How do I know what path God wants me to take? Is it doing anything yet?
A few things are coming up.
See what's going on? And so then I just come over here and click on search. 3 ways to follow God when the path isn't clear. Oh, that's the Mormons telling you about that one, isn't it? Crosswalk. That's a good Christian website. How can I know what God wants me to do with my life? 8 keys to knowing God's will and plan for your life. Bible study tools. I've seen that one before. That's a good website. You understand? And if I look at one and I think that's a little off, then go look at another one. Where does God want me to work? How to know the will of God? Cool stuff. You didn't know it had all that stuff on there. You thought it was just secular stuff? Well, let's just keep going and see what else we have here. How can I completely trust God? Build a relationship with God. How to trust the Lord with all your heart. 3 steps to learning to trust God. How cool is this? Just tons of good stuff out there. Do you guys realize how blessed you are to have Google available to do this for you? I mean, when I was your age and I wanted to know this stuff, I had to go to a library and dig through all the resources to find the stuff I was looking for. And here today, you have this available. This is why I like doing this. How can I be a better Christian? See how it kind of finishes the sentence for you because it knows where you're going. How can I be a better Christian? Wife, woman, life, man, teenager, mom? Whoa, a whole bunch of them. Let's just click on the first one. This cool stuff out there. Isn't this amazing? Let's delete that one. How can we attain world peace? How can we achieve world peace? Well, let's just do the one we clicked on here. There you go. 5 easy ways. Just cool stuff out there. Oh, and always down at the bottom, there's always related searches. That's interesting. How to achieve world peace essays. You know what that is, don't you? That's the place where if you're supposed to write an essay on how to achieve world peace, you don't have to do your own research. You can just go find one. And I'm saying if you do that, just put down, hey, I didn't do any research. I found a paper already written. Here it is. Is that acceptable? What will they say? No. You're welcome to attach that as an addendum, but I want you to show me you can do some research. But you could look at that essay to get some ideas of where to go, how to write your own paper. So don't be afraid of that stuff. Just don't go around cheating in life. You know, if you start cheating to get through college, who knows what that's going to mean for the rest of your life? When you get a job, when you get into ministry, when you get married. I mean, see, all that other stuff, cheating is serious business. Well, it's serious in school too, because we're trying to help you prepare for the rest of life. All right. How do we stop wars and violence? V-I-O-L-E-N-C-E. V-I-O-L-E-N-C-E. How to stop war and violence. All right, let's click on that one. Preventing conflict, stopping wars. Religions for Peace International. See, that's interesting because you know what some people say? Some people like to say all the wars in the world that have always been caused by religion. Have you been told that somewhere? If you go back and do the history of wars and study what prompted people to fight a war, it wasn't religion. But if you want people to volunteer to fight in your war, you give it some religious overtones, and then that gets religious people to jump on the bandwagon. So enough of that. Oh, by the way, that brings up something, since I'm waxing eloquent on some of this stuff here, getting a little carried away, expressing my opinion about it. I need to clear something up from the other day. When I told you about this Roe v. Wade thing, do you remember I said Roe v. Wade passed in the Supreme Court, but it was 5-4? That wasn't true. I checked it when I got home just because I saw the looks on your faces like, you know, that surprised you. So I got on the internet and looked it up, and it wasn't. Roe v. Wade was in 1973, and it passed 7-2. But it gave the states a whole lot of jurisdiction over controlling abortions. It just said that you can't say they can't have one. There can be cases where they could have one. So Roe v. Wade actually opened the door for women to say, I have a legal right to an abortion under these conditions. And that was in 1973. And that one passed 7-2. And it caused a real stir in our society when it passed. But in 1992, this is the one I was thinking about, but it wasn't Roe v. Wade. In 1992, there was another case at the Supreme Court called Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And that was the one that said Roe v. Wade was being a little too restrictive, and that Planned Parenthood wanted them to loosen up, to broaden the perspective of Roe v. Wade. And it almost failed. But then at the last minute, one of the Supreme Court justices changed his mind and went the other way, and it passed 5-4. So the current Supreme Court status that we're living under regarding abortion, that decision was made 5-4, and it could have very easily have gone the other way. Now do you see why people who are pro-abortion, no, they say, no, don't say pro-abortion, we're pro-choice. Oh, are you? You want people to make a choice? No, I want them to be able to choose to have an abortion. Well, then you're pro-abortion as opposed to pro-life. So do you understand why some people are really concerned about if too many pro-life judges get on the Supreme Court, this thing could turn the other way where we could go back and put a few more restrictions on it? And that's what's making some people really angry about this stuff, because look at the big picture and see what's going on, and they realize how close it is, how easy it would be for the Supreme Court to rule a different way, because some more issues are going to come up in the future, and there are people who are simply saying we don't want restrictions on a woman's freedom to choose. And I'm saying, you know, ladies, your freedom to choose what to do with that, they call it fetal tissue. Now, what you choose to do with that little baby inside, if you're not being responsible in terms of the life of that unborn child, maybe the state should step in and say, you have some obligations. If you get pregnant, you have an obligation to bring that child into this world. If you make that choice, then you need to live with the consequences. Okay, did I type in how to stop war and violence? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's turn that one over and go to the next one. How do you find your identity? Well, let's type it in. How do you find your address? Blood pressure, blood type. IDENTITY. See, it's kind of fun looking to see what pops up here. Look at that. How do you find your identity? In Christ. How do you find out if your identity's been stolen? You know, that's the stuff where they get your credit cards and things like that. How do you confirm your identity on Facebook? Let's just click on this one. And see, the first one people look at is getting your credit card stuff, your Social Security stuff stolen. Fraud. Then here's the second one. This is how you find your true identity. ThoughtCatalog.com. Know Yourself. Psychology Today. 3 ways to find your true identity. WikiHow. Discovering your identity. Self-discovery portal. How to find your own identity and capitalize on it. Forbes magazine. How to find your identity. Quora. How to build your personal identity. Psychology for Dummies. If you've ever seen that book out there. You understand? There's just a lot of things you can look at that'll help you answer these questions. Okay. How do you graduate debt-free? How to graduate debt-free from college. Isn't that what we're talking about? Look at that. All the ways to graduate from college debt-free. Oh, this is just so cool, finding all this stuff. Okay, someone put how to not pay for college. It's the same kind of thing. I circled what popped up was how to pay for college. So you could type in how to pay for college, and that'll answer it too. How do you know what career you're supposed to pursue? How do you know what career? Now see what happens. You want to pursue is best for you. Path to take is right. Which one you want to click on?
Is best for you.
Is best for you. See, you have some choices, and if you don't like one, you go back and pick another one and see what you get. What career is right for me? Career aptitude test. Some of you took that personality test, right, and said, hey, so there's career aptitude test too. Okay, and you know what? I like this idea of a career aptitude test, but let me just add one thing here. When I got saved at 18, I wanted to make up for lost time by not growing up in the church, so I came to Calvary to study, to get to know the Bible and to get to know the Lord better. And while I was here, they only had like 4 or 5 majors back in the 1960s. And so I just picked the one. The guy who led me to Christ was a pastor, and I was so excited that someone gave me the light of day, showed me the light of day, that I just signed up to be a pastor. And even though in my pastoral classes, all these guys were in there, I'm called to preach, I'm called to preach. And why are you here, Tom? Well, it's because it's a required course in the pastoral major, and that's the one I picked to major in. And it's like, well, you're kind of a misfit here. And I said, well, that's what I'm doing anyway, and I'm learning a lot, and I thought it would be nice if a pastor leads people to Christ. That would be a fun thing to do. Well, when I graduated, I went to work in I was selling insurance at the time and preaching in a little church on weekends, and somebody came to me and said, Tom, we're starting a Christian high school in town, and we need a math and Bible teacher. And I'm going, well, I'll pray for you that God sends you one. He said, no, we were thinking of you. I go, me? A high school teacher? And see, my mind went back to my own high school years, and I thought, I did not like going to school when I was in high school. I kind of thought I was being incarcerated for 6 hours a day, and I thought, I don't know if I'm cut out to be a teacher. And then he just said, well, could you help us out until we find someone? And see, he didn't even know it, but those little words, help us out, really ring a bell with me, because some people say that I'm Tom, may I help you Bonai. So I just like helping people. So I said, sure, I'll help you out, because I sold insurance at night and preached on Sunday, so I could do that during the day. And I went to start helping these guys out. And after about a month, and I was praying that God would send them a teacher, and I said to my wife, Nina, I know this sounds strange, but I'm really enjoying doing this. So even if it's something you think you wouldn't enjoy, if God opens a door, don't be afraid to take a step of faith and do something just to serve the larger body of Christ. And maybe God will take you someplace that you hadn't thought about going. But when you get there, you go, wow, this is so cool. So, now that isn't true for everybody, but it worked for me. And I spent the rest of my life doing it. And am I having fun? And somebody said to me, you're still teaching? I thought you'd be retired. And I said, I am retired. I am. That's why you don't see me in an office on campus. I just come to campus, teach my classes, and then go home. But just because I'm retired doesn't mean I have to quit teaching, does it? No, this is too much fun. Why would I quit doing this? What are your tips for saving money? Okay, now I just typed in here TIPS for saving electricity, for a car, for gas. There it is, for saving money.
54. That's a lot of ways.
Look at all this stuff. There's tons of good stuff here. Now, if you're asking me personally, what are my tips for saving money? If you don't spend it, just don't spend money. Look for ways to avoid spending it. And if you have to spend money, okay, I have to have clothes to come and teach in. So where do you think this shirt came from? Every time you see me wearing a cool looking shirt, just think 50 cents. He bought it after church on Sunday at the Red Rack thrift store. So if I buy shirts for 50 cents, okay, now I will add something here. Okay, if I buy shirts for 50 cents, then if I'm going to stand on my feet for, 2.5 to 3 hours a day teaching classes, I learned this from a barber friend of mine. A barber better have good shoes because he's going to be on his feet all day. Well, a teacher better have good shoes too. So if I spend 50 cents for the shirts I wear, do you understand? That saves enough money to where I can go spend $50 to buy a pair of shoes to make sure that I can comfortably stand on my feet all day long. Okay, enough of that. So it isn't like I don't spend money, but I save enough of it where I have something to spend on something else. Oh, here's one. Why? This one is so cool. Well, what in the world? Click up there, get up there. There we go. Why is my what? Nerf gun jammed? Why is my Nerf gun? Why does my Nerf gun jam? Did you realize that's on the internet? And look, it's telling you why. I bought my grandson a Nerf gun some years ago at a thrift store on a 50-cent thing. And he started playing with it because it was working, but then it jammed on him. What do you think he does? He gets on the internet. He finds out what makes it jam. He gets some tools. He takes it apart and fixes it. His father had a padlock that had a combination on it, and nobody knew the combination. What does my grandson do? He gets on the internet and finds how to open a combination padlock without knowing the combination. I'm just telling you, folks, this stuff's out there. The guy, when he changed the oil in my car a while back, he said, "Did you know the lights that light up your license tag are burnt out?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." He said, "Well, you can get a ticket for that." I said, "Oh, well, then I guess I better replace them." He said, "Well, we can replace them." I said, "How much?" He said, $30. I said, "I'm thinking light bulbs only cost $3 or $4. I'll just do it myself." He said, "It's pretty complicated." Now, I didn't say this to him, but don't you think this when you're at the oil change place? If this guy can do it, I can go on the internet and read the instructions and do it too. And sure enough, I went to the parts house, bought me a couple of light bulbs for $3, $4, $2 each or something. Went home, got on the internet. I found one set of instructions that were really complicated. I'm going, that's too complicated. So I just scrolled down till I found some instructions that weren't so complicated. and fixed it myself. How to make time for physical activity. Well, look at that. How to make time. One way to make time for physical activity is to combine it with recreation. Good idea. Let's see what it says here. How to make fitness a priority at home. All kinds of things about staying fit. I go to my doctor. He says, so do you do anything for exercise? And I say, yep. And he says, what do you do? I said, on my way home from school, I stop at a grocery store and I walk up and down every aisle looking for bargains. And if I stop at 2 grocery stores on the way home, I told him how far I walk. And he said, that's good. So that's how I save money. Instead of paying to go someplace and walk on a treadmill, which to me would be kind of a waste of time, I do my walking, going around the store looking for bargains. And if I need more exercise, then I'll go to Walmart. And if I need more exercise than what I'm getting now, I'll go to the Walmart the new Walmart over by Raintree. Have any of you been to that Walmart? That thing is huge. It'll wear you out walking around that one. Okay. Let's go up here and see what else we have. I'm using a lot of time for this. And I thought about just putting this stuff up there. But isn't it helpful to see me doing this right in front of you to realize what you can do? Hopefully it is, because I'm sure spending a lot of time doing it. Why do we have 24 hours in a day? Who knows? 24 hours. Oh, why do we have 24 hours in a day and 365 days in a year? Would that be fun to look at? Yeah. All right, there you go. What's the next one? My goodness. I can't believe I'm taking this much time. How can I figure out how and when to quit my awful job? How can I figure out? There it is, quit my job, to quit my, not just my what? Awful. Let's just put the whole thing in there and see what we get. Because sometimes when you're stressed, you just need to write the whole thing out and see what happens. 5 things to do before quitting a job you hate. You see what happens? See, you're not the first one to ask this question, so you go look at all this stuff. Here's what to say when you quit a toxic job. Know when to quit your job by watching for these signals. 3 signs you should definitely quit your job. Just tons of good stuff out there. Oh, man. Okay, how do you know for sure a dream is from the Lord? If you type in, how do you know for sure that a dream, the next thing that pops up underneath is from the Lord or is from God will pop up there. Is it possible to be a gay Christian? You type that in and you'll get a whole bunch of responses from different perspectives. What can we do to reach equality with all people? Whole bunch of stuff on equality. What's on the other side of the rainbow? You type that in, a bunch of stuff pops up. You pick one. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? Actually, the one I found that was the most interesting to me was Psychology Today. Talked about why there's so many songs about rainbows. So I thought that was so cool what they said about it. Oil change. Now, this is what someone wrote down. They said oil change. So I just typed in oil change, and it came up time, coupons, Walmart, prices, locations, a whole bunch of places you can go get an oil change. So I don't know what your question is, but you'll find your answer. Just Google oil change and you'll find your answer. So how does predestination work? What's the limit to man's free will? And so guess what I typed in? I thought, that classic discussion. So I typed in predestination and free will and found a ton of places on the internet to look at that. Okay. I guess what I should do in the future is when I do this is to limit how many questions you can submit on those little pieces of paper. But what do you think of that little exercise? I know I spent a lot of time doing it, about 45 minutes. Maybe that's part of it. It takes time to do this stuff. But if something's making me anxious on page 498, isn't it worth going to the internet to try to answer the question? I need a new battery for my Sony Handycam. I get on Amazon and find out that Sony wants $50 for a battery. And some other place that makes a battery that they say will work will sell me 2 batteries and a charger for $12. So I'm thinking $50 makes me a little anxious about buying a battery. But will these little cheap $6 batteries work? Then I scroll down to see what people say about them, and it says 256 people have bought them, and the approval rating or the satisfaction rating is like 4.5 on a 5-point scale. I'm thinking, whoa, that's worth spending $12 just to see if it'll work, right? And all of a sudden my anxiety disappears, and I'm thinking, whoa, instead of spending $50 for one battery, I just got 2 with a charger for $12. And sure enough, works fine in my camera. I'm just telling you. I'm filming my grandson playing baseball. A foul ball hits the thing and breaks the little... Have you ever dropped your phone and broken the screen where you can't see it anymore? So did you go buy a new $300 phone, or did you get the screen fixed? You didn't know you could get the screen fixed? I went to one of these places that fixes things, and I said, I know you fix phones. Can you fix cameras? And he said, let me see. And he started getting his computer looking stuff. He said, yep. He said, we can fix that. It'll cost you about $50. Well, if the camera cost about $300, why not spend $50 to get a new screen? Said, here it is. Go ahead, when you get it, call me and I'll come over and bring you $50. And I got a new screen for it, just like that. Stuff that starts to stress you out a little bit, just get on the internet and you'll be amazed at the stuff you find that'll help you de-stress. Now, page 498 talks about anxiety disorders. And I think this is important. All of us are anxious from time to time. They say afraid, but all of us are anxious from time to time. We usually know why we're anxious, and our anxiety is caused by something appropriate and identifiable, and it passes with time. But in cases of an anxiety disorder, that's when people don't know why they're having these anxieties or what's exactly going on, and that's when they need some help, because they can have it's like I said before, all of us have little times when we're anxious, and I gave you those handouts on anxiety the other day, so you could have some help in that regard. But if it goes too extreme, then you say, I probably need to get some help before it gets to the place where I have a disorder. Anxiety disorders are on page 498. Page 501 talks about psychosomatic and somatoform disorders. These are disorders, it says in the margin there, where there's a real physical illness that's caused by psychological factors, such as stress and anxiety. And I talked about how my wife would get those fever blisters when we'd go to Oklahoma to see my family. But if someone thinks, well, that's pretty sad, I'm going, wait a minute, you should meet my family. If you're a calm, quiet person, my family could give you a anxiety attack. Okay, that's page 501. Let's jump over here to page 504. You can read about all these disorders, but I'm just going to look at the general categories. On page 504, dissociative disorders. Dissociation means that part of an individual's personality is separated or dissociated from the rest, and for some reason, that person can't put the pieces all back together. What was that little riddle we learned? Humpty Dumpty, what? Sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Now, you know, I didn't know this for a long time, but all of those old English goofy things like that were actually political statements. You can research that and find out what it's all about. But the reason they couched it in phrases like that is because in our day and age, if you want to say something political, you just say it. In that day and age, if you said something political and the king wasn't pleased with it, you could be stuck away in a dungeon for a long time. You could just disappear from the face of the earth. So that's where a lot of those old English riddles came from, which I think is interesting. Because I think what they were saying was the king is nuts. But you couldn't come out and say that because it'd get you in trouble. Okay, that's page 504. Let's go to page 506. Sexual disorders. Now, the bottom of page 506 has an important statement here. Ideas about what is normal and abnormal. Ideas about what is normal and abnormal in sexual behavior vary with the times, with the individuals, and with the culture. Just to show you, when I was a kid in school, adultery didn't exist. Here's basically what happened. When two people got married, everybody else in the community respected the marriage bond so much that they wouldn't think of doing something immoral with either one of those two married people. Have times changed? And maybe part of that was because you live in a community where everybody knows everybody. But if two people decided they can't live together anymore and they want a divorce, okay, today they just get it. I mean, like if you're going to be a teacher, you're going to have a lot of children in your classroom who are from broken homes, so we call it. And I think it's neat that the literature uses that word because that's the correct word. When the home's been broken, and that's what it is, when a home gets broken, it has consequences for the children. But when I was a kid, if somebody was going to get a divorce, they would not stay in the community. If two people couldn't live together, they were so embarrassed that they couldn't make it work that both of them would just move away and go separate directions. They would get their divorce legally. Well, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes in census records, when people were still alive but not living together, when you look at the census record, they would each say that they were widowed, that their spouse had died when their spouse was still alive living someplace else. And sometimes people would get a divorce. So do you understand what they say about sexual, what's normal in terms of sexual behavior varies from time to time, and different individuals have different thoughts about it, and different cultures feel differently. And the world, the culture that you're living in, as far as I'm concerned personally, they take a lot of what I would call sexual dysfunction and call it normal. But we've got to keep moving because we have to finish this stuff. So let's go to page 510. Personality disorders. There's a little margin down there that sums it up. Personality disorders are disorders in which inflexible, and maladaptive ways of thinking and behaving learned earlier in life cause distress to the person and or conflicts with others. And it says learned earlier in life, not necessarily in childhood. That situation so affects them that when they come out of jail, they're a different kind of person. And a lot of people will say, if you can do anything to help a young person avoid going to jail, jail is not a good culture for a young person to live in. You can almost be assured that there's a lot of people that would love to turn this child into a lifetime criminal, like the rest of them are that are in there locked up. And when a guy told me that one time, that's when I said, okay, I'll agree to meet with this young guy. The judge said that we'll put you on probation on one condition, and a policeman friend of mine said to him that he knew a guy who could maybe help this kid, and I agreed to meet with him once a week and keep him accountable for what he was doing. And when we first started meeting, he didn't like it, and I said, so you don't like having these meetings, why do you keep coming? And he said, because if I didn't, I'd go to jail. I said, there you go. So this is the lesser of two evils. Let's make the best of it. So order something to eat and make yourself comfortable while I talk to you about what's going on in your life, and while you talk to me about what's going on in your life and how you can, and let's face it, the only way you end up in that kind of a situation is you have decided not to be a normal kind of citizen. And you've crossed the line, so I'm going to try to help you adjust your thinking to live inside the lines that society gives us. But the point is that picking a certain lifestyle can affect your personality. Okay, that's 5:10. Let's jump up to 5:14. Schizophrenic disorders. Severe disorders in which there are disturbances of thoughts, communication, and emotions, including delusions and hallucinations. And if you know anybody who's a little schizophrenic, it's when you know what God intended for life and how He wants us to live, and you see somebody suffering from one of these disorders, my heart goes out to them, and I think, oh, Lord, what can we do to help those guys? And then you know, when I go through this chapter on all these disorders and all this stuff that can go wrong in people's lives, I can't help but ask the question, why does all this happen? Now, some people would say, why does God let all this happen? But I'm saying, you know, why are we blaming God for this? Because the devil's a liar. Remember, I told you that before in here? The Bible says the devil's a liar and the father of lies. Do you know what the rest of that verse says? Who stalks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. So do you understand that because the devil rebelled, because Satan rebelled against God and got kicked out of heaven and is destined to an eternity of punishment, when this whole world system is all shut down and God's finished with it and decides to build a new heaven and a new earth, the devil and his angels are toast. And can I just say this? He wants to take as many people as he can with him. And he does everything in his power to destroy people's lives. He wants to keep us from knowing and experiencing God's best in life. And he does everything he can to mess us up. And what does the Bible say about him? He's a liar. So he'll lie to us. For example, God said it wasn't good for man to be alone. He needs to have a wife. So he gave him a wife. And Adam was a happy camper. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us how it all played out, but apparently, ladies, can you see this happening? Two men are talking, and this guy says, "Whoa, is this being married a cool thing?" And the guy says, "Yes, it is." And so watch what one guy says. If one wife is that good, why not two? Guys are just dumber than stumps, aren't they? Because what makes that one wife so good is it's that one wife that God gave her. As soon as he adds two, you know the story, don't you, what happened? When the guys with more than one wife and the wives got at each other, it's like, wait a minute, that isn't what God intended. That was man's invention. It's like, well, what made him think that way? You say, well, see, ladies, okay, it's okay to say, well, they're just stupid. Men are just stupid. And I'll say, okay, I'll agree with that. But what happened is the devil lied and they believed it. I mean, isn't that what he started doing in the Garden of Eden to mess things up to begin with? He took this man over to the tree and he lied to him about this tree. Is that what happened? You don't want to talk about it. He took Adam to the tree of knowledge of good and evil and offered him some fruit, and he ate it. He lied to him about it and got him to eat it. Is that what happened?
No, it was Eve.
Oh, it was Eve he lied to. And that's why the men say, you girls aren't very smart either. I mean, it's a two-way street, isn't it? We both find ourselves being trapped, tricked, lied to, and then suffering the consequences of those lies. And there's no question about it. Satan and his campaign is not to make everybody happy. He's to destroy, to destroy, to destroy all that God intended for us to have. And that's why when I look at these disorders, I say, you know what, people need, people need the Lord. People need the Lord. I don't care what disorder a person has. If you could get that person to put their faith and trust in Christ, it won't solve all their problems, but it'll sure get them closer to enjoying life the way God intended it to be. All right, after schizophrenia, what are we talking about? Page 518. Childhood disorders. These are, now children suffer many of the conditions that have already been discussed in this chapter, but there are some disorders that are characteristic of children. And of course, what's the one they mention here that's most often talked about today?
ADHD.
ADHD. Now, I'll just tell you, okay, there was no ADHD when I was in school. Back in the 50s, there was no ADHD. Now, I'm a hyperactive person. I don't know if I realized that. I don't think I realized how hyperactive I was until I got married. And my wife said one time, Tom, don't you get tired? And I'm going, yep. And when I do, I go to sleep, get the rest I need, pop up, and go at it again. And she goes, that's not the kind of tired I mean. She goes, it just wears me out just watching you. She goes, even when you're sleeping, your motor's going, just wound tighter than a drum. And I'm going, really? I mean, no one ever talked to me about it. Oh, yes, they did. When I was in grade school, Tommy, sit still. Sit still. And I still remember putting my hands to my side and thinking, why am I in trouble? Because I was just fiddling around with stuff, because I was hyperactive. And one day I knew the teacher was so perturbed to me that I thought, if I do anything wrong, I'm going to be in serious trouble. And if I get in trouble at school, I'll get in trouble at home. So I just sat there with my hands like this, and I put them together, I think maybe I'd seen people pray, and I thought maybe, I don't think I was praying. I would just hold them like this, but I put my head down, and then I put my hand up here, and I felt some hair, and I pulled one out, and rolled it in a little ball, and then I pulled another one out. And by the time the school day was over, I had a little, and when I got home, my mom said, "What happened to your hair?" I guess I pulled it out when I was being scolded in school. And they didn't say, "He's ADHD, take him to town and put him on medication to slow him down a little bit." They just told me to sit still and pay attention. So, when I started as a teacher, when this thing surfaced, and I said, you know what these ADHD kids need? They need me to grab them by the shirt and say, "Sit down and get your work done." But I thought, no, that there might be more to it now than we realized back when I was in school. So I went to the university and started taking some classes on ADHD kids. And I was shocked. And the teacher said to me, "So because I'd already had my PhD when I was taking these classes, so the teacher thought it was strange that a guy with a PhD was back taking these courses. And she said, "So what's the good doctor think about what we're saying in here?" And I just said to her, I said, "You know, the cattle on our farm took better care of their offspring than these parents you're talking about." Anyone know what I'm talking about here? How you probably, in this age, have friends who come from homes. In fact, the more I learned about the way some of these homes operate, I'm thinking they shouldn't be allowed to raise children. They shouldn't be allowed to have children. Animals take better care of their young than some of these people do. And my heart just went out to these kids. And of course, you know why, don't you? A lot of schools want to put ADHD kids on medication. Does anyone know what it does to them? Have you ever had a pain and you took some medication to make the pain go away, and it makes you kind of dull and drowsy, and it says don't drive when you're under this because you can't really, it just kind of turns you into a zombie. So they don't cause the teacher any trouble, but now they've had their brain shut down where they can't learn anything either. So it's a pretty sad state of affairs. We're not really dealing with the disorder. Well, now we're doing more to deal with it, but again, you say, yeah, sometimes we take those children out of the regular classroom, put them in a special classroom, and I'm thinking that's great, except in some of those special classrooms, guess what? If you're diagnosed as ADHD and they pull you out of the regular classroom and put you in the special ed classroom, the special ed teacher doesn't think you know how to learn anything, so they just let you play with blocks all day. And you don't get an education. It's a tragedy, and not everywhere, but where it's not working, it's a tragedy. And be aware of that and say, wow, let's do what we can. Let's learn all we can and do what we can to help children deal with their situations they're in such a way that we help them overcome any potential for disorders that can disrupt their lives. And for me, being hyperactive has always been a benefit. But when I was in grade school, it kind of got me in trouble because I can get a lot more done. Okay, page 5. Oh, that's it. We're ready for chapter 14. Good, because we need to get to chapter 14. Get it started, and then we'll do the rest of chapter 14. Oh, chapter 14 is all about therapies. And I have a handout for you here. Now, chapter 13 is all about these disorders. Chapter 14 is all about what do we do about these disorders. And this handout for the people online is called Different Approaches to Psychotherapy. And the reason I like to have this handout, it just kind of sums the whole chapter up. So when we talk through it, you kind of keep the big picture in mind. Where it talks about the different kinds of theories. for the different kinds of approaches to dealing with this. But I have a card here where I wrote something down. So let me turn this back on. Go back down here to Google and type in, what's that all about? Google. Google search and type in, is biblical counseling a psychotherapy? Whoa. Look at all that stuff. Is it effective? Does it work? Is it important? Is biblical counseling, P-S-Y-C-H-O-L-O, what is that? Psycho, go back, P-S-Y-C-H-O, psycho, T-H-E-R-A-P-H-Y. Is biblical counseling psychotherapy? And here's the varieties of religious therapies, biblical counseling. David Paulison, how does biblical counseling theory differ from psychotherapies? Biblical counseling versus psychology, Christian psychology. Here's a whole bunch of websites you can look at that talk about biblical counseling and what people think about it. Because, are you ready for this? Well, you can tell from your handout, can't you? Biblical counseling is not listed on here, is it? Because, any idea what the secular world of people who practice therapies to help people who have disorders from the last chapter, what they think about biblical counseling? Anybody want to guess what they think about it? What?
That it doesn't work.
That it's a fraud. They think it doesn't work. They think that these people are a bunch of religious nuts. But why would we be surprised at that? When I went to the university and I'm sitting in a class with a bunch of other PhD students, and some lady's complaining about a lady at her school who teaches and she has a Bible on her desk and she reads it during lunch break. I said, what's wrong with that? It wouldn't matter what book she was reading, would it, if she's not bothering anybody? And she goes, yeah, but she's reading the Bible. I said, so? She goes, so, you think it's okay to read the Bible? I said, of course. I read it all the time. And she goes, you do? And I said, yes. She said, so, are you a Christian? And I said, yes. And guess what her next question was? How did you get into the PhD program? What's the assumption behind that question? That if you're a Christian, you're not smart enough to work on a PhD. Okay. Now, my wife says, Tom, that was not the proper thing to do. But I looked this lady right in the eye, and I said, I took the graduate record exam, just like you did. What was your score? That was not a kind thing to say. But I get so tired of people thinking we Christians are, as they say in Oklahoma, dumber than stumps. And I just blurted it out. Because, see, okay, I'll just tell you right now, if you go to graduate school at a secular university, they're going to find out what you believe, and the best thing you can do to enhance your personal credibility is to score very high on the graduate record exam. And it has two parts to it. Verbal skills, okay, from reading your pilgrimage papers, you guys will be fine there. Math skills. So you say, well, if half of it's math, then I better keep my math book. I better study math, and you can buy a big thick book, study it for the graduate record exam, and you can study the math and you can work at it so you can have a high score, so that when your professors are puzzled by your Christian perspective on things, as I don't know how many times they said this to me, said, Tom, you're just such an enigma. And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, I saw your graduate record exam score. You're very intelligent. I'm going, well, thank you very much. He said, but why do you believe this stuff? And I said, why not? Have you ever looked at the evidence? No, I don't have time for that, he says. I said, well, that's what happened to me. I took time to look at the evidence, and it changed my life. Yeah. And I really thought if I shared that with them, that they would want to maybe take a look at it. Weren't even interested. But because I scored high on that test, they were tolerant of me and my Christian beliefs. If I would have bombed the exam, I had a Christian friend who took the exam and his score wasn't high enough. And he called me and he said, so can you help me? He said, my math score was real low. And I said, hey, I can help you with your math. And he came to my office and I helped him work on his math. And guess what? He went back and took the graduate record exam over, and he raised his math score substantially. And his advisor, we were going to the same university, and his advisor said to him, how did you do this? I've never seen anybody raise their math score on the GRE. And he said, well, there's a guy here working on a PhD at your university who helped me. He said, what's his name? He said, Tom Bonine. He goes, what? He taught you enough math in a short period of time to help you raise your score that much? That's what he did. So all of a sudden my reputation was enhanced again because of my ability to teach math to somebody to do something that they thought couldn't be done. Because they kind of thought, see, this score is a reflection of your intelligence. And by the way, since I'm a math teacher, I just blew the top off the math part of it, but I knew my language skills were weak, so I studied for the English part of it. And the Lord was good to me. He gave me some resources that prepared me for that exam. So understand, when it comes to this therapy stuff, there's a whole lot of therapists who are just going to say, no, that biblical counseling stuff just doesn't work. But you know what? Does 1 John 1:9 work? If we confess our sin, He's faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Does that work? Okay, does this surprise you that people who aren't Christians would say, that's too simplistic? You have to do penance or something. I mean, you have to do something to make it right. No, you confess it as sin. He says He forgives us and cleanses us from all unrighteousness. All that other stuff we weren't even thinking about. Whoa, God just gives us a clean slate on a regular basis? Yes, He does. That doesn't seem right. You understand? That just boggles the minds of those people out there in the world who just don't get it. And hopefully what it does to you is it makes you say, wow, Lord, thank you for saving me. Thank you for making me one of your children. Thank you for giving me this new life in Christ. And like some of you said in your pilgrimage papers, you became a Christian so young in life, you didn't have that contrast. But can you imagine when that all happened to me at 18 and I'm going, bang, wow, what a new way to live. And guess what? Okay, my own father said this. He said, oh, Tom's just off on another one of his crazy tangents. He'll get over it in a little while. Okay, so when I'm 20, 2 years later, I'm not over it. When I'm 25, I'm not over it. When I'm 35, I'm not over it. When I'm an old geezer, I'm still not over it, people. It's just the best, greatest thing that ever happened to me, and I love it. God's the greatest therapist in the world, and His Word is the greatest handbook. And if you're having trouble finding answers, then go to some biblical counselor and let them help you. Okay, what's the first one? Help you gain some insight into what's going on. That's what psychoanalysts are trying to do. And like this guy on that I clicked on him earlier just to see what he had to say. He said, we do a lot of the same things that therapists do, but biblical counseling is more about helping people get their lives together rather than just accepting them as they are and telling them to just work harder at it and try more of something and hopefully it'll get better. We have solutions that come from God's Word. But we help people gain insight, help people become aware and understand their feelings, their motivations, their actions. So, I mean, you don't have to be a biblical counselor to do that, do you? Just help somebody become aware of, why are you being mean to your sister? I don't know. Well, let's talk about it. What were you thinking? What did they do that set you off like that? What's going on? You know, you just help people gain a little understanding and awareness of what's going on. And of course, the secular therapist hopes that this will lead to a better adjustment. But we, as Christians, say, and here's the kind of adjustment you need to make in your life to get on with your life. Now, psychoanalysis wants to bring repressed feelings and thoughts to the consciousness because they believe so much of this stuff is unconscious. Frankly, whatever is going on in the unconscious part of my mind, if the conscious part of my mind, what does the Bible say about your mind? Let this mind be in you which was in Christ Jesus. Set your mind on things above. I mean, just type in the word mind and see what the Bible says about it. And if you're taking care of the part of your mind that you're aware of, the rest of it seems to pretty well take care of itself. Page 529 talks about client-centered therapy. That's the Rogerian stuff, where he just makes you feel warm and fuzzy because you're the center of the conversation. He just says back to you what you said to him because it's all about you. Gestalt therapy says, tries to help them fill in the holes in becoming a whole person, fixing the things that are empty. Like, for example, if someone says, I just don't have any friends. Well, let's try to find you some friends. Now, and see, you see what the biblical counselor would say? You know what the Bible says about friendship? I mean, can you see where, even, say, just type in the word friendship, see what it says. He that would have friends needs to be friendly. That if you want friends, start being friendly with other people. Behavior therapist on page 533. You can figure that one out, can't you? Insight therapies are trying to help you gain insight. Behavior therapies are going to address your behavior. Focus on changing your behavior to teach you a new, more satisfying way of behaving. Nobody at work wants to talk to me. Oh, do you know why? No. Well, do they say anything about the way you're talking to them? Yeah, they say I'm so bossy. Oh, well, if your behavior is perceived as being bossy, maybe you should think about being less bossy. Change your behavior and see if it changes some of these relationships. And again, if you say, hey, if people say this stuff about the way I talk, does the Bible say anything about how I should talk to people? Take your little tablet, type in, what does the Bible say about talking? Oh, I just love this proverb. A soft answer does what? Turns away wrath. Grievous words do what? Stir up anger. Do you guys go through the Bible and collect all this stuff? See, you can take your tablet and just do it. When I was in your place in life, if I want to know what the Bible said about talking, I had to take a piece of paper and write down, what's the Bible say about talking, and read through the Bible to find it. Or I could use a concordance and get some selected passages. But if I want to know everything it said about my mouth, I had to go clear through the Bible. But if you're reading through the Bible anyway, just use that as an occasion to check out some of these topics you have an interest in and see what happens. And you find that God says a whole bunch of stuff about a whole bunch of things. And it's time to go, isn't it? Well, we'll finish this up on Monday and then start chapter 15 and be done on Wednesday. And remember, I'm going to change the due date on the paper to the 20th, to next Saturday.